you just don't know what good things are coming. Like you can't even imagine some of the things that are going to happen in your life. And just to sort of stay curious and stay excited for that.
Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspect of running, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. This episode is brought to you by SuperCoffee, the healthy, delicious alternative to sugary coffee drinks. SuperCoffee was recently named the fastest growing food and beverage brand in America by Inc. magazine, and after tasting a bunch of their flavors, I can see why. Their coffees contain zero sugar, and many of them contain 10 grams of plant-based protein. They're growing in popularity in the running community, and I'm excited to share a special discount with you. They offer a 60-day money-back guarantee, meaning if you don't love it, you get your money back, no questions asked. Grab 15% online with the code FTLR or look for them nationwide in 25,000 stores like Target, Whole Foods, Walmart, Kroger, and CVS. Cheers. This episode is brought to you by KINeSYS. It's sunscreen, just better. May is Skin Cancer Awareness Month, and given that skin cancer runs in my family, I'm proud to partner with and share KINeSYS with you. Now that I'm up in the mountains of Colorado, skincare and sun protection is more important than ever, especially with summer just around the corner. Their sunscreen spray makes application simple, and there's no scent or fragrance either. It's different than any sunscreen you've tried, and so light you won't even feel you're wearing it. Welcome back. I have Caity Ashley joining me on the podcast today. Caity, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited.
For sure. So first question is always a tough one. Who is Caity?
Caity is a second-year master's student studying public health. That's something that I'm really passionate about. And I'm a person who loves to have a lot of fun. I don't take things too seriously. And I'm just really, I love connecting with people and yeah.
Cool. Talk to me about your master's program. We'll dive into the running side after that. I'm sure it's a pretty interesting time to be pursuing that during this pandemic.
Yeah, that's so funny because telling people before the pandemic that you're studying public health, you get a lot of what? Like, what is that? What do you do with that? And then a pandemic hits and you tell people that you're studying public health and it's like, oh, that's super relevant. That's great. So yeah, it's definitely been a very interesting time, I think, for anyone to be in school. But yeah, definitely to be studying public health. And so I'm in the nutrition concentration specifically at the School of Public Health at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And it's a coordinated program with registered dietitian training. So in August, I will have that RD credential as well. So it's a lot.
Very cool. And where did the interest come from?
I think from a personal interest in nutrition is probably where that started. But I think that I've just had a lot of opportunity to intern and work in places where I was sort of face to face with a lot of health inequity. And that is really what drew me into sort of the public health side of things. So, looking at evidence-based solutions for those kinds of things. And I've definitely engaged with a lot of that during the course of the program.
And have you engaged with the general public about these topics as well?
Definitely. I think when I'm engaging, I think it comes up a lot too, just with the running community and sport, because I see sort of this industry, this community as a space where there's just a lot of conversation being had about some of the public health issues of our time. And so it's really interesting for me to go from engaging with the content on the academic side of things, and then to sort of connect that with some of the relationships and issues that come up just within the running community. So that's been a really interesting thing for me to sort of work with and think about.
For sure. How does it How does it play into your own personal life? Are there takeaways that you're learning about sports nutrition, or is it more at the public health level?
Definitely, there's a little bit of sports nutrition content within my curriculum, which is, I think, surprisingly not what I'm most interested in. But something that I sort of face a lot is my cohort in particular is pretty interested in weight stigma or the discrimination of people based on body size or having a larger body size. And so that's something that I've worked really hard to sort of learn about, find my own weaknesses and blind spots. And that is something that I see sort of a lot of room for improvement within the running community is how do we make people in larger body sizes feel more welcome to this community? And I think there's some things that we're currently not doing so well. But I'm really optimistic because I see very tangible ways that we can improve that within our community.
What are some of those tangible ways?
One thing, I think the way that we talk about our own bodies is really important. So, I think it's pretty common to hear things like someone takes a break from running and they come back and they say, "Oh, I feel really fat." And one, fat is not a feeling. You can feel tired or you can feel like you've lost some fitness. You can feel groggy, but fat is not a feeling. And then secondly, it sort of implies that fat is a good or bad thing. And I think to improve this sort of weight-based discrimination, we need to get away from that concept. So the way that we talk about our own bodies is a huge one. And then another thing that I think about is sort of the way that races and running can sometimes be marketed to people. And around Thanksgiving, I noticed that pretty much all of the local running stores marketed their turkey trot as like earn your turkey or run off your big meal. And that right there is sort of using disordered eating habits to market a race. So I think like that's one way that we can improve as well. And then I also think about running companies and running stores. Are you tailoring to people that have a larger body size? So if you're not including that within your product line, then you're essentially saying that like these are not people who are going to run and take part in this sport. And that's just not true. So how can we be more inclusive and make this sport more accessible to people of all bodies?
Very cool. Yeah, I think it's the kind of thing. There's so much power in all of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reason that I'm a runner is because I watched the Boston Marathon and saw people of all shapes and sizes running a marathon.
Yeah.
And I was like, we can all do this. Literally, I was like, look, these are older, younger, larger, smaller, black, white, Asian, like everything.
Yeah.
And I was a naive, overconfident 22-year-old at the time. And I was like, if they're doing it, I can do it.
Yeah.
And I was impressed by, the 75, 80-year-old woman running down the street in Wellesley, running a marathon. And I was like, look, if they can, if it's for everyone is what I'm trying to say. Maybe I'm not delivering this properly, but that was the piece that opened my eyes to running.
And I think sort of what I'm hearing from what you're saying is this idea of representation. And that's so huge. And I see how our sport is improving representation in a lot of other ways when it comes to racial diversity and, people of different sexual orientations. Like I think that we're growing in this direction. And I see in some spaces that representation of body size is improving to some degree. But there's also companies and businesses that just say, oh, well, we're not for everyone. This, we cater to sort of this smaller size body and that's what we're going to do. And I think one of the reasons for that is while racial discrimination and discrimination against sexual orientation and some of these other things are becoming more and more socially unacceptable to sort of do outwardly, weight stigma and weight discrimination is really pervasive because it's not as socially unacceptable as some of these other things. So, and it intersects with all of those. So I think that there's sort of a huge responsibility as a running, fitness, outdoor community to be thoughtful about that and to try and move in the right direction with some of these other things as well.
So I'm curious where your passion for this comes from. I'm always interested in, like, the goal of this podcast is exploring the why. So I like to understand, like, where this motivation comes from any passion, whether it's running or public health or whatnot. So I'm curious for you, where is this passion coming from?
That's a great question. I think this is something that I've been a little bit more close to within my program, and I have several friends in the program who care a lot about this and have done a lot of work creating even workshops for us to sort of look into this kind of discrimination. And so I'm really interested in it, and I'm especially knowing how pervasive this kind of discrimination is. That makes me really curious to, like, okay, we know it's a problem. What are the solutions? Like, how can we get there? And then I think on more of a personal level, I think every single one of us has been in a position where we're feeling like our body isn't good enough for whatever reason. And that's, messaging that we're getting from culture and from other people and from marketing. And that's a really hard feeling to grapple with. And I think as a person who does have thin privilege and I exist in a smaller body and I have this kind of a hard time, I think about, okay, how would that then be amplified if it's not just sort of if it's not just internal, but it's also externally you're being discriminated against because of your body size. So I think I just try and have as much empathy as possible for that, or try and sympathize with that. And yeah, I think that's where the passion comes from.
I think the empathy piece is, is something that we need more of, to say the least.
Yeah.
So, yeah, appreciate the background there.
Yeah.
I always find that piece to be interesting, and particularly when it's for a cause that more people should care about. Switching gears over to running, given that this is a running podcast, allegedly.
Totally.
So you run for Raleigh Distance Project.
Yep.
I've had a handful of your teammates on the podcast as well. I know Andy Cozzarelli quite well. I know she's not on the team anymore, but
Yep.
Helped to get it to where it is today.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious about your start as a runner, and if you remember your first run.
Yeah, I think my start as a runner feels to me very pure. Like, I think about growing up and playing freeze tag at recess, or like chasing my brother around the backyard, or my friends, or running on the soccer field. And I just thought it was the most exhilarating feeling to, like, be so out of breath. Your lungs are on fire. You're getting all sweaty. Like, I just love that feeling. And I remember, like, playing freeze tag sometimes. Like, I didn't even care if I was catching the person. I just wanted to run really fast across the playground. So I go back to that sort of purity of it quite a bit when I get sort of boggled down in training and numbers and spreadsheets to, communicate my training to my coach. And then I think over time sort of learn to enjoy the competitive piece of it.
I love that. And one of the things you've sort of alluded to there and also referenced right at the beginning was you like to have fun.
Yeah.
And I think this fun piece is, like, very overlooked. I had Aisha Protlier on the podcast, and she said, I'm 30 years old, and if I didn't have fun every day, I wouldn't still be doing this.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with Kara Goucher a couple of weeks ago, and she was like, I love that. I love seeing athletes having fun. And I told her about how Aisha needed to reschedule our first recording because Corey McGee ran an 800-meter PR in practice, and they were out celebrating with mimosas. She's like, I love that. That's like,
I love it.
yeah. And so, to your point, like, so many of us do get bogged down in numbers and spreadsheets and Strava and splits and all these paces and all these things. And at the end of the day, like, it's just running. I mean, for a lot of people, it's a job, and for others, it's not.
Hmm.
But it's the meaning that we assign to it and the experiences that we have with it. So talk to me about this evolution of fun for you, and how do you keep fun in your day to day?
That's a great question. I think that I'm going to mess up the quote exactly, but sort of in terms of competing, I think a lot about the Lauren Fleshman quote, where it's, make the track or make the race your playground, not your proving ground.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I think about that all the time in races, because I am my happiest self when I'm in the middle of a race that I've trained really hard for. Like, I just get so excited. I am dialed into everything that's happening around me, and I'm really focused, but I'm also just exhilarated and having a blast. And so I think that that hasn't always been the case. There's certainly been times when I haven't really enjoyed the process, and sort of been a little bit down mentally, and racing wasn't as fun. But for the most part, if I can, focus on that and sort of meditate on that, then I'm having a great time.
Awesome. What would you say to somebody who's sort of lost touch with the fun?
That's a great question as well. I would maybe ask them, like, when was the last time that they had fun, or what was their favorite race memory or workout memory where they were having a good time? And then maybe try and think about, like, what was happening then? Where was your thought process then that enabled you to have that kind of fun? And maybe just try and get back to that. Because I think if you're running competitively, you probably have that somewhere. I think it's easy to lose, but do a little searching, and I think it's there.
Yeah. You look at some of these teams that are having they're fun teams with a running problem.
Yep.
And like I look at I look at Team Boss, I look at Nazalete, I look at Bowerman, and they're just like it's like camp. They're just having
Yeah.
fun out there. And I think that there are so many athletes that require the strict regimented, this is what I'm doing, this is the job. And that's, if that's you, sure, own it. But I think the majority of people fall into the other category of like, we're doing this because we enjoy it,
Yeah.
and we're not just like checking boxes and getting the job done. But again, if that's your MO, and you're a professional athlete, and you work best when you're dialed and regimented and whatever, and you're doing the job, hopefully that works for you.
Right.
In the same conversation with Kara Goucher, she was telling me about her relationship with Shalane Flanagan, who is that person who
Right.
is, much more dialed and regimented, and, would not consume alcohol the week before competition and whatnot. And she was like, we balance each other out. Like, I would push her, she would push me. She would push at the beginning, I would push at the end. So it was like very literal in that sense too. And I think that type of balance is necessary. And even those who are regimented like that need that balance. And clearly it worked for her.
Yeah.
It worked for both of them.
Yep.
But I think that amateur runners in particular definitely need the fun in there. If it's something you want to do, for a long time or for the long run.
Absolutely. And I think that's one thing that I sort of add to the team, the Raleigh Distance Project, is sort of that balance, because certainly some of my teammates are they get a little bit more of a high from checking the boxes than I do. But I am so often asking myself the question of, like, is what I'm doing now going to be beneficial to the fact that I want to be doing this 15 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, like just being a competitive runner. And if I'm doing something that I think is just bogging me down too much, I'm losing touch with the joy, then I'm probably going to not do it. I'm probably going to figure out something else. So I think that's definitely important for the long run. Yeah.
For sure. Thanks again to SuperCoffee for supporting this episode. I have been loving their French vanilla and hazelnut flavors and the cold brew cans. SuperCoffee combines the caffeine from 2 cups of coffee with protein and healthy fats to give you hours of focused energy with no jitters or crash. I love it as a strong start to the day. Receive 15% off of your purchase at drinksupercoffee.com/FTLR or use the code FTLR at checkout. I recommend trying one of their variety packs or bundles. If you give it a try, let me know what you think. Thanks again to KINeSYS Sunscreen for supporting this episode. Everything from the ergonomic bottle to the ingredients they include and also leave out have been developed specifically for those of us who love to stay active and be outdoors. Available in select retailers and online, grab a 15% discount with the code FTLR and step up your sun protection game this spring and summer. Visit them at KINeSYSactive.com. That's KINeSYS active.com. And now back to our conversation. So did you run today?
I did not. I'm actually currently on a little bit of a running break. So I'm starting back next week. So I've just been hiking and biking and walking around.
So I'll adjust the question a little bit. When you go for your next run, what's getting you out the door?
My next run is probably going to be on the first day of my internship that I'm starting next week. So that run is going to be about sort of processing the day. It's going to be a lot of new information and a structure to my day that I'm not used to. So like, it's just going to be getting out the door, getting some sunshine and feeling the legs move again.
And what are you going to be thinking about on that run?
I think I'm going to be pretty excited to be running again. I am getting to that point in the break where I'm itching to do it and bring it back to my daily life because it's been a couple weeks here. So I imagine it'll just be a really good feeling.
Will gratitude be a factor?
Definitely. And I think for a lot of reasons, gratitude just to be able to safely move my body in an outdoor space is going to be one piece of it. And then also just sort of going through a lot of changes with graduating with my master's this weekend and starting a new internship. And I think change can be really overwhelming, but just sort of grateful for the way that the pieces are moving and I'm working towards my goals.
That's awesome. Yeah, it can be so powerful. I had a 6-week break from running last year, and I came back to it like right at the start of the pandemic. And the appreciation I had for, as you said, freely moving my body outdoors, in fresh air and open space was a feeling I did not take for granted with any stride. So I think the return to running from injury or time off or break or the pandemic or whatever it might be, can sort of like reshift and help repurpose all of it. So I'm excited for you.
Yeah. And I think it gives you an opportunity to come back to that. I had been training pretty consistently for an entire year, with the exception of a few days after I got my wisdom teeth out, which I don't count as much of a break really. And I think like the longer you go without sort of a reset and thinking about the why, I don't know. I think that I just reached a point where it was time to take that break so that I could sort of recenter in that way.
Was it a forced break or was it by choice?
It was by choice. Yeah. I think, and it was a little bit hard to grapple with because I was in probably the best shape that I've ever been in for, the races that I'd wanted to do on the track, but was definitely feeling pretty burnt out, not really energized, sort of mentally and physically feeling it. And it was right around the time when my teammates are signing up for track races and looking at those calendars for the spring. And it was when I had really wanted to be doing that too. But I'm pretty intuitive, and I knew that I wasn't in a good headspace to hop on the track and try and scrape out a PR. And I was a little bit nervous about what that would do for sort of my long-term confidence with racing. And I just decided I'm going to take a break I will, get that fitness back, and races are just going to keep on coming. So the time will come.
What were some of those signs? And the reason I ask is I think that, so I had Emma Cortez on the podcast a few months ago, OTQ marathoner out in Boulder,
Mm-hmm.
and she didn't run much in 2020. I think she
Mm-hmm.
took 6 months off
Wow.
after the trials, and she's like, "It's the best thing I ever did for my running career."
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are afraid to do exactly what you did, which is like listen to these cues. The way I like to describe it is like your body starts whispering before it starts yelling. And so
Yeah.
you listen to it when it was in the whispering stage before it started yelling at you. So I'm curious, how did you accept, maybe accept is the wrong word, but like how did you come to grips with that? And um, what did that process look like and feel like for you?
Um, yeah, the process started with just feeling pretty like not within myself during workouts. Like normally a workout is hard, but feels very uh, like manageable. And I was at the point where I would run the first interval of maybe 12 for a workout. And I was feeling like I should have been done with the workout. That was how I was physically
Right.
feeling. Um, and another cue that I sort of took in was, most of the times, even if a workout is really hard and I'm going all the way to the well, I'm finishing it with like a smile on my face. Like I'm pretty, again, just feeling exhilarated after a workout, and I'm making jokes and laughing on the cool downs. And I was getting to a point where, you know, several times a week I was in tears after a workout or at the end of a workout. And I was like, this is not normal. This is not how I normally feel when I'm working this hard. And so another piece of it was just talking to my teammates and saying like, this is what's going on, talking to my coach, and sort of they helped me to maybe dissect some of these cues and really, support me in the fact that like a break was probably the right thing to do.
Was it hard?
Um, it was hard.
Like the first day you didn't run, when your routine is you get up, you run. Talk to me about that.
The first day that I didn't run, it was good. The other maybe cue that I didn't mention is that I was feeling overwhelmed before the start of most runs. I was like, I've run a 15-mile or longer long run countless times over the past year, and I would see 15 miles on the schedule for the long run, and I would feel so overwhelmed before I even started the run. So that was another cue. And I think, the first day I didn't run, I just relaxed, and I think it was really a good thing, and I was feeling good about it. It's been harder just to see other people and my teammates getting really excited to gear up for a race. And I'm thinking like that could have been me if the timing would have been a little bit different. That's really the hardest part of it. But I'm also really good at talking to myself and saying, like, races are going to keep on coming.
Right.
There's still plenty of opportunity left. And all of the hard work that I've put in over the past year, like that still counts. I still get to sort of have that in my arsenal to get back to it. So
Very cool. Yeah, I think that again we get back to the like short term versus long term goals.
yeah,
And if you had short term goals and that was the priority, you would have kept going, and maybe you would have hit your PR, and that could have been your last run for 10 years. And I think that this approach of like I keep making the joke like for the long run
yeah,
um, is the kind of like longevity in the sport that we all need to hear. I think what's interesting is we see so many people who are just go 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 all the time, and it's like, wow, that person's hitting this race and that race and this race and that race. And what you don't see is what happens when you don't see them. And
mm-hmm,
it's the kind of thing where like on Instagram you only see the highs and you only see the rise
mm-hmm,
of doing all these great things, and like people aren't posting about, wow, I feel like trash and I felt like trash for a year. I felt like I haven't run a step in months. So definitely appreciate you sharing the cues and this process of like being in tune with your body and listening to it and respecting it enough um, to do something with long-term health in mind.
Yeah. I think it is harder to be super public about the things that are, causing us some heartache or that are hard to navigate. And I myself I'm not as public about maybe some of those things. So I do appreciate the opportunity on the podcast to talk about it, because I do think that it's important for people to hear about it and talk about it, because it happens to every runner and every athlete.
For sure. Um, how will you adjust training or running in the future with the takeaways from the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I definitely will. I think one thing, it was a little bit related to the pandemic in that the training mindset for the past year was kind of to sort of train at a sustainable, I don't know, sustainably, and also kind of indefinitely, because we weren't sure when races were going to pop back up on the calendar. And so to me, I think that definitely played a role, in the fact that it was such a long grind before that happened. I think I've talked to my coach a little bit about, I'd rather, like, now that we're sort of reemerging from the pandemic a little bit and more races are happening, that I'd like to have more of a finite training period. So that I have a race on the calendar and I know that I'm going for this amount of time. That's definitely one thing. And then also I was feeling pretty beat up after the track race that we did. And I think that I didn't give myself enough time to recover from that. And I was just sort of in a hole that I couldn't dig myself out of. So I think paying a little bit better attention and maybe advocating for myself a little bit more, when I am super trashed from races or from hard efforts, so that I can make it back into a training rhythm without feeling as beat up as I did.
Yeah, I think that's an important takeaway that like as we get older in the sport, we learn these things that like I think about like myself as a mid 20-year-old runner and like I would race a half marathon and then I would like do a workout 2 days later.
Yep.
It's like
Yep.
no, that doesn't work.
Yes. And it's like, my training spreadsheet is not going to be, in charge of when I feel recovered and ready to get back to a workout. Like, I'm in charge of that kind of a
Yeah,
thing.
Jesse Thomas on his podcast with Lauren Fleshman a couple years ago talked about or on their podcast together.
Uh huh.
Anyway, on this podcast, they talked about how a training plan is just a plan,
Right.
and it's not set in stone, and it's intended to be like the tent poles and sort of what provides structure and context. But if you listen to a plan and follow a plan all the time, you'll probably get injured
Right.
if you're not making adaptations and changes and whatnot. And I think that's like a huge limitation of these custom plan or these cookie cutter plans that you get online. And
Yeah.
if you don't have the funds to get a coach, that's one thing, but you should still be evaluating. Do you need
Yeah.
that long run? Do you feel good? Do you need that extra fifth, sixth, seventh run in the week? um, when rest and recovery is just as important, if not more, for long term growth.
Yeah. And I think that it's a skill that you can hone in on some, but it's also something that you have to continually work at. I don't think that you are ever at a place where you can't really just think critically about what the training plan is and what the workouts are supposed to be and how you're feeling and what other factors are, happening in your life that are affecting your stress level and your training. And you just have to continually be honing in on that skill, I think.
We're not robots, so
Right.
you can't just like set it and forget it.
Yep.
Switching gears again, what are your goals for 2021 from a running standpoint?
From a running standpoint, I'm still really excited about shorter distances right now. I was pretty amped on the half marathon and the marathon before the pandemic. And then when COVID hit and most things were virtual on your own time trial situations, I was like, well, I'm not time trialing a half marathon or a marathon. I know other people do that and more power to them. That's incredible. But I had absolutely no interest in that. So I got really excited about more like the 5K, 1500. So my goals are sort of there. I'd love to run sort of 1640-ish for the 5K. And I think my 1500 PR is from college. And I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I think it's 450 maybe. And I think that there's some space to improve that. So
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how it evolves. At the start of the pandemic, I said the same thing. I'm like not interested in time trialing at all,
Yeah.
and I'm doing a half marathon time trial in 3 days, and
Good for
I'm
you.
like
That's so
so
impressive.
excited. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so
Um,
impressive.
I think it's the kind of thing where it's like follow the fun and follow what's lighting you up at the time. I had a conversation with Devin Yanko a couple of years ago,
Uh-huh.
um, ahead of North Face 50 out in California, and I was like, I don't know what to do from a training perspective. And so I asked her this question, knowing that, she's she's a specialist in everything from the half marathon to the 100 miles. So she's got some range, and she's done literally all of it. And she'll have road periods and trail periods and everything in between. So I was like, how do you choose? Like, how do you choose what to focus on? And her answer was basically like, pick whatever you think is fun and chase that for as long as it's fun, and then switch it up and do something different. And I was like, that's so simple. And that's been working for like the last 4 years.
Yeah. That's great advice. And I feel like that's a little bit my method. And I'm grateful that sort of being at the level that I'm at, like I do get to choose and I do get to talk to my coach before every season, and discuss what feels exciting and fun at the time. And yeah, I think that's great.
Very cool. If you could go back 10 years and tell yourself, tell the Katie of 10 years ago something, what would that be?
10 years ago, I was, 16. So I wasn't running at the time. I was just playing competitive soccer for my travel team in my high school. And I think it would be really fun to tell myself that I was going to run in college and even give it a try post collegiately, because I don't think that I would have believed that at the time. I think it would be fun to see my reaction at a time when I wasn't running at all.
That would be cool. Okay, so fast forward 10 more years ahead from today. And what does that Katie say to Katie of today?
I think that Katie says something along the lines of, um, "You just don't know what good things are coming. Like you can't even imagine some of the things that are going to happen in your life, and just to sort of stay curious and stay excited for that."
I love that. The stay curious in particular. What does that mean?
For me, that is a way that I can, when I am feeling a little bit more stressed or anxious about the future, if I shift my mindset to a mindset of curiosity for what's to come, and doing these things that I haven't done before and living a life I haven't lived before, it changes my whole outlook, and sort of mitigates the stress and the anxiety about things. So I find that to be a really helpful switch that I can make.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to share this experience and this journey of yours. I think that the piece about taking a break is something that I hope resonates with a lot of people. And if it's something that you've considered, trust me, the return from this break, whether forced or by choice, is very reinvigorating. So, Caity, thanks so much for sharing all of that, particularly that part of it. I definitely can relate, and it resonated. For those who want to follow along with you and your journey, where can we find you?
Oh, I'm on Instagram. I think it's at Caity Ashley with an underscore in the middle. That might be wrong. I don't think there's too many Caity Ashleys. Yeah.
We'll get the fact checkers on that one.
Perfect.
But, there's an underscore at the beginning.
Oh, there is? Okay, perfect.
And then it's Caity Ashley. Awesome.
Perfect.
Thanks so much for taking the time to chat today, and enjoy your time in Colorado.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Of course. That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next time on For the Long Run. And in the meantime, happy trails. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too.